Students, and welcome to the G3 e-learning classes. I hope you all are doing well. Today we are going to do our next chapter of Flamingo, Lost Spring, class 12th. First of all, I will tell you something about author. This chapter is written by Anees Jung. Anees Jung was born in Rourkela, Odisha in 1964 and was brought up in Hyderabad. She studied in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. She began her career as a writer in association with the Youth Times in 1976. She was a renowned author, journalist for major newspapers in India and abroad. The following chapter is an excerpt from her book Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood, in which she tries to depict the inhuman treatment of children from deprived backgrounds. This chapter consists of two stories. Both describe the pitiable condition of the poor children who are denied the opportunity of schooling and are forced to work under hazardous conditions. So in this video, I'll explain the first story, and in our next video, I'll explain the second story of this chapter. So let's start. Why do you do this? I asked Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Sahib left his home long ago, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. His home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him that's why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Here, in this paragraph, author asked to Sahib, who was a rag picker, that why he do that, means why he scrounged in the garbage dumps of her neighborhood. In next lines, author describes that Sahib's family left the green fields of Dhaka long ago because the streams swept away their fields, and his family moved to Delhi in search of some work for living. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say, glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. When author asked from Sahib that why he do that, means the scrounging of the garbage, then he answered that he had nothing else to do. Then author advised him to go to school, but at once she realized that her advice was fruitless, because they were so poor they cannot afford any school, and there was no school in that area. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I'll go. If I start a school, will you come? I asked half jokingly. On this, Sahib told her that there was no school in his area, and he wished that if someone built the school, he would definitely go. On half jokingly, author asked if she starts the school, would he come? And what Sahib answer? Yes, he says smilingly, broadly. And Sahib answer was in yes. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? After some day, author saw him running to him towards her and asked whether she has started the school. It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a hollow promise that was not meant, but promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. And then on it, author felt embarrassed because she did a hollow promise which has no meaning. Next paragraph. After months of knowing him, I ask him his name, Sahib-e Alam. He announces. He does not know that what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe, he would have a hard time believing it, unaware of what his name represents. He roams the street with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appears like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. When they know each other enough, author asks the boy about his name, and his name was Sahib Alam. And Sahib even does not know what was the meaning of his name. And it would be really hard for him to believe that its name meaning is the Lord of the universe. Sahib roams the street with his friends like a barefoot army. Even author also compares Sahib, morning bird, Sahib and his friends with the morning birds who appear in the morning and disappear at noon, but it takes 1 month to recognize them for author. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. One day author asked why he did not wear chappals. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf, he answers simply. And his answer was that his chappals were on the shelf and his mother did not bring them down. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. Even I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says the third boy, who has never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities, on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. And further he added, and if his mother will bring them down, then he will throw them because he don't want to wear mismatched shoes. And the third boy, who has never owned a pair of shoes in his whole life, said that he wants a pair of shoes. As author has traveled across the country, she had seen children walking barefoot in cities and villages, and someone explained that it was not lack of money but a tradition to stay barefoot. According to the author, maybe it was a perpetual means a permanent state of poverty. Wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. So maybe it could be the one excuse. That is why they are barefoot. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me as a young boy. He would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of dissolution. In the backyard, In this paragraph, author remembered a story of a young boy from Udupi. His father was a priest in a temple, and the boy prayed for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, she again visited his town and the temple, which was drawn means डूब गया था in the air of dissolution means अकेलेपन में, and where lived a new priest. There were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys, like the son of the priest, now wore shoes, but many other, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remains shoeless. So there was a new priest, and there were red and white plastic chairs in that temple. A young boy who was in the uniform and shoes. After looking that boy, she remembered the prayer of the another boy, that he had finally had got a pair of shoes, and goddess had granted his prayer, but many other like rag pickers remain shoeless. My acquaintances with the barefoot rag pickers lead me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it. Metaphorically, those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Once author visited Simapuri, which is on the periphery. Periphery means outskirt, okay, of Delhi, and the people who came here in 1971 from Dhaka are squatters. Squatter means a person who unlawfully occupies an uninhabited inhabited area. This area is wilderness. Sahib's family is among them, and Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty in structures of mud with roof of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water. Live 10,000 rag pickers. They have lived here for more than 30 years. Without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters list and enable them to buy grain. See, this Simapuri was the area, even still it is, with the wilderness. Houses of mud with roof, tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage and running water, and 10,000 rag pickers were residing there, and they are living here for more than 30 years without permit but with ration cards, so that they can get their names on voter cards and can get ration from the ration shop. Food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris. When I ask them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers, wherever they find food, They pitch their tents that become transit homes. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival, and survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. See, one lady in a tattered sari, not one, some ladies in the tattered sari said that food is more important for survival and it is more comfortable for them to live a life of rag picker than to live in green fields which gave them no food. They were living in very poor condition in tents. Simapuri means rag picking, and garbage to them is like a gold. Garbage means for them is daily bread. It is their daily bread. A roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof, but for a child it is even more. So for them, garbage meant for them like a daily bread, a roof, but for child it is even more. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. Sahib says his eyes lightening up when you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage. You don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elder, it is a means to survival. See, in this paragraph, in this Sahib mentioned that sometimes he found a rupee and sometimes 10 rupee note, and in hope that maybe one day he could find silver in that garbage, and for their parents it is a mean of survival. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by a fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around. He admits the gatekeeper lets me use the swing. So here Sahib is saying that on a winter morning, author saw Sahib standing near the fence gate of a club. Inside the club, two men were playing tennis in white dress. Sahib liked the game very much and admits that the gatekeeper sometime allowed him to enter in the club and let him use swings. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me. He says in the manner of an explanation, the fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. Sahib was also wearing tennis shoes, but these shoes was really looking strange because it was really mismatched with his faded t-shirt. And then he told the author that someone gave to him because they are discarded shoes, because there is a hole in one of the shoe. But for one who walked bare feet, the shoes with hole is like a dream come true. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I know, work in a tea stall down the road, he says. pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask his face. I see his loss, the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. One day, Sahib was on his way to milk booth because he had started working there and 800 rupees were his salary, with 3 times meals. She asked him if he liked the job as she could witness the carefree charm missing from his face. The steel canister of his master seemed heavier than the plastic bag he used to carry earlier. Now Sahib was no longer his own master. So this was a pathetic story of Sahib. In our next video, I'll explain you the next story. I hope you have understood this chapter. Thank you so much.